All right. Well, we didn't have the. All right. Okay. All right. So we are live now. So Josh, you want to take over?
Hey everybody, this is Josh Searson of World Alternative Media here for another episode of WAM News Live, and we have Tim Picciott joining us, of course, on this show. And we're going to go into a whole bunch of news stories, but first make sure to check those links below, press like on this video, and let's go straight into the latest news, as I know there's no shortage right now. And let me just pull this up. All right. So this article out of the dailymail.co.uk says hotel in China holding coronavirus victims in quarantine collapses as emergency service scramble to reach 70 trapped in the rubble. This is pretty terrible news. Obviously, imagine having coronavirus being quarantined, and then on top of all that, you have the building you're in collapse. Around 70 people were trapped after a hotel collapse in China's eastern Fujian province on Saturday evening, officials said. Xingjai Hotel in Quanzhou City collapsed around 7:30 p.m., 11:30 GMT. And at least 23 people had been rescued by 9 p.m., according to local government statement. The 80-room hotel was recently converted to a quarantine facility for people who had recent contact with coronavirus patients, the People's Daily State newspaper reported. Now, I want to just talk about this real quick. I mean, having some background myself in the realm of architecture and engineering, I know very well how they cut corners. Not only cut corners, they pay off these government inspectors. The government inspectors tend to be very corrupt. And obviously in China, they prefab buildings and put them together extremely fast. And I have no doubt that that's what we're seeing here. They're rushing too many people into this building, putting too much stress on the building, and then we see it collapse. There's more stories coming out in the news here regarding coronavirus. I'm going to jump to the next one, which is that South by Southwest has been canceled due to coronavirus after Austin has declared a local disaster. Now, we will go into the coronavirus a bit after I go through some of these articles, but obviously there's a level between fear-mongering and cover-up, and I believe that this is a bioweapon. I'm convinced that this is a bioweapon, and I believe that what we're facing right now is a very strange psychological event, cutting between fear and obviously a real panic that can actually affect a lot of people and kill a lot of people, and especially older people. Jumping to the next article out of Zero Hedge, it says leader of Italy's Democratic Party tests positive for COVID-19. Iranian lawmaker dies. And I want to also note that multiple people in the Iranian government have died. There's a massive amount of cases, and people within the Iranian government are claiming that this is a bioweapon by the United States against Iran and China. Now, that could very well be the case. I think it's more likely that, I mean, I could see the U.S. doing that, but I could also see China doing that as well. China's well known for bioweapons. It has cleared out protests. It has caused basically people to become more subservient to government. People are literally, bowing down and declaring themselves into quarantine and putting themselves into FEMA camps in the United States. FEMA camps, well, FEMA facilities, they're FEMA camps. The same thing we've been talking about for so long at WAM is finally coming to fruition. Jumping to the next article out of Zero Hedge, it says former British supermarket boss warns of potential COVID-19 food riots, army patrols, and as he goes into here, it says, Former Tesco supply chain director Bruno Montaigne warns that a large scale of outbreak of coronavirus in the UK could lead to food riots requiring the army to be used to guard supermarkets. Obviously, we've seen a lot of rushes on supermarkets, Costco, Walmarts, etc. They're running out of toilet paper. They're running out of all sorts of stuff. They ran out of masks months ago. And on top of that, we see a huge disruption to the supply chain, which has been a big red flag. It's kind of what needs to happen as far as figuring out ways around the supply chain, the current supply chain, and creating new innovations, hopefully blockchain-oriented innovations to help aid this issue. Jumping to the next article out of the Daily Mail, it says U.S. hospitals are preparing for 96 million coronavirus infections and nearly 500,000 deaths, leaked documents reveal, and the bullet points just say almost 500,000, 480,000 Americans are expected to die from coronavirus. 4.8 million will be hospitalized and 96 million infected. Figures come from leaked slides from a presentation by Dr. James Lawler, a University of Nebraska Medical Center professor, and hosted by AHA. They show the spread of the deadly disease could be far worse than officials claim, with the crisis 10 times greater than a severe flu season. The shock figures fly in the face of claims made by President Trump, who has maintained on many occasions that the risk to Americans is low. Lawler estimated people with heart conditions have a 1 in 10 chance of dying from the disease, compared to less than a 1 in 100 among healthy individuals. Trump signed a spending bill to allocate $8.3 billion to tackle the crisis Friday. U.S. has around 300 cases and 17 confirmed deaths after Florida confirmed its first 2 deaths on Friday. So, again, I mean, there is a lot of fear mongering. There is a lot of nonsense. It's the kind of stuff that will get people on their knees begging for the government to help. It's exactly beneficial to that system. It's beneficial to eugenics. It's beneficial to all of that. I don't think it's as black and white as saying, you know, it's just fear mongering or it's a panic situation that everyone needs to run and hide from. I think it's towing the line between. I believe these issues are scripted and it benefits a certain group of people and doesn't benefit the others. I want to jump to the next article that says, we simply do not understand why coronavirus is sparing kids, puzzling experts. This has been a weird phenomenon, how children appear to be okay, largely. There was a 17-day-old baby a while back ago in Japan, I believe it was Japan, that got coronavirus and survived in a few days without medicine. It seems to be resistant to kids and very much impactful to older people. And we see that, for example, with the nursing homes in Washington. This is one of the things where the news isn't, well, like usual, the news isn't telling the whole truth. They're basically saying that there's all these deaths in Washington state. It's a panic. It's a state of emergency. It's terrible. But most of them are in nursing homes. And let's be fair, older people are more likely to die from the household flu and other colds as well. So that should be taken into account for sure. And I feel like they're doing a disservice by not properly reporting on the context of that story. Nonetheless, people with lung issues like myself have a much higher risk of dying from coronavirus. People with asthma, people with already existing lung infections and stuff like that, which, by the way, I have. Carrying on to the next article, as the Zero Hedge article says, expect up to 40% of Tehran's population to be infected in 2 weeks, Iranian health official says. And the health officials worry that Iran could be a sign of things to come in much of the rest of the world. I do want to say that, as we reported recently, a Harvard professor and epidemiologist claimed that we are expecting to see as many as 70% of the world infected with coronavirus once this runs its course. Now, then there's another Harvard professor that says it's being overblown and it's not a big deal. Dr. Drew, the famous Hollywood TV doctor, or whatever you want to call him, also says that it's not a big deal. Trump says it's not a big deal. CNN says it's a big deal one day and then the next day not a big deal. Fox News, same thing. This is why they're just basically trying to confuse us. I honestly believe at this point that we are facing off against issue of a psychological warfare, an issue of confusion. We have this other article out of Zero Hedge that says, shocking new study concludes that best case scenario for COVID-19 pandemic is 15 million dead. So see, I don't like to get into that speculation. There's a very good chance that in 5 months, it'll have run its course. There's a very good chance as well that it'll be weaponized, it'll get worse, and millions will die. But with that said, I hate the fear. I think we need to focus on the solutions, and those solutions happen to be being healthy. I remember, I think it was, what's his name? There's a Hollywood celebrity. Tim, can you help me out here? There's a Hollywood celebrity recently that claimed that he posted on Facebook that that vitamin C is a great cure for coronavirus. And Facebook said vitamin C it was propaganda and put up a fact check over his post. he was that guy that was in all those Adam Sandler movies.
Was Rob Schneider maybe?
Rob Schneider, that's it. Rob Schneider.
Hollywood is not my strong suit of trying to figure out movies or things like that.
Hey, you got it. You got it better than me. But I mean, yeah. So Rob Schneider essentially claimed that. Well, he posted on Facebook that vitamin C is good for you, and that fear of coronavirus is not good for you. And they put a fact check thing over it and hid the post on Facebook. This is a kind of Orwellian feature we're entering into right now. It's absolutely ridiculous. It doesn't even make sense. But anyway. I'm going to continue to report on these issues, but I want to just note that we know the beginnings of this. There's evidence that the novel coronavirus, which is one of many coronaviruses, was first found in the Netherlands. You can cut to me, Tim. And we know that was brought over to a Winnipeg, Canada lab. And that Winnipeg, Canada lab ended up, they say, this is a theory, that the disease was stolen and brought to China, and then it was weaponized by China. Iranian officials have recently said it was a bioweapon. U.S. officials have been saying that it might be a bioweapon. China, blaming U.S. blaming China, Iran blaming U.S. It's just like it is just all drama at this point. But one thing we know for sure is that everyone should be cautious, everyone should be careful, but everyone shouldn't be running around scared. Tim, what do you think of all this insanity regarding coronavirus?
Well, I'm glad that I bought a bunch of those masks like 4 or 5 years ago on the super cheap, and I already got a bunch of toilet paper and food and water, which is one of the things that you tell people all the time as a solution is, having water and having other things to be prepared. I mean, I'm out here in the desert, so I mean, it's only a smart thing to do. But also when it comes to, like, okay, what lab happened to be the first one to, basically sequence the genome? Oh, it's one that happened to be right outside of Wuhan, and then they shut that, and then China shuts that one down, and they shut down this other one that sequenced it in Shanghai. So I mean, that seems very strange. But yeah, I mean, I think trying to keep yourself healthy is the best thing to do. So I'm not really that concerned about this, but obviously I get more into financial things. So I don't know if you have some more articles you want to discuss first before we get into the financial side of things, because this is really the black swan that can kick off a whole bunch of other things. And all this financial stuff was going to happen eventually. It was just, there needed to be some sort of linchpin that no one could predict. And this is, the black swan that no one could predict. So, but I think before we go into that, probably go into some more of the articles that you have.
We're going to get into this other article in another report on this newscast. We are cutting out these and putting them up later. But there is one article that's called "The Market Slump is Just Beginning. COVID-19 is not the cause, it's a catalyst." And obviously, it's had a profound effect on the stock market. But I mean, that stock market was very fragile to begin with, and it was only going to take a little nudge to knock all those dominoes down eventually. And I believe that with a 4,000 point fall in the Dow, as the article says, it's the mere beginning. We've been warning about the crash of the stock market for a long time, and again, all it needed was a major contagion, pandemic kind of fear that would stop the tourism industry, that would stop people from going out, eating out. But I mean,
all it needed was a major pandemic. Yeah, it's all it needed. But the funny thing is, not to cut you off, but there's actually was an ad for the N95 mask on the Zero Hedge right now. So as you're reading this, right above your face is an ad for the N95 limited stock buy now. So I just wanted to point that out because it is pretty hilarious, because you wouldn't be able to see that. So
it's just insane. Yeah. Well, anyway, we're gonna go into more issues regarding the stock market and coronavirus in another report coming up right away. For now, we're going to end this report. I want to hear what people have to say. Write in the comments and let me know what you think about all this insanity. And also make sure to press like on this video if you haven't already. It makes a big difference, and it helps us stay alive as a media in the algorithm anyway. For now, you can cut back to me, Tim, and then we will just we'll go into the next article right away. But yeah, so super chats are really helpful, all that kind of stuff. Make sure to check those links below for ways that you can help keep independent media alive. There's a ticker that has been going below us while I read the stories and everything that gives you the latest headlines. And also, go and look in the description. I have a link to a new YouTube channel called WAMcast. WAM space cast, which you can subscribe to in the links below. We are going to be doing podcasts there, so I really hope everyone joins us there. It's not yet shadow banned. I'm sure it will be in the next week now that this is on here, because I have people I'm pretty sure that are like just following me and just I don't know, just trying to do whatever they can to stop me from being seen by people on here on YouTube. So it probably won't be long. But anyway, we got more stories to go into on the show today. So we're going to go into a few of those. I want to just mention a few things in the chat here as Bob Boberson says the jobs numbers are up with the sudden need for grave diggers. Yeah, that's the only job number that's up that's not included or factored into the labor force participation rate. Rika, the hopeful voluntarist, says subbed. Looking forward to the podcast. Thank you very much. Yeah, we will be putting up lots of podcasts in the future. I also have a Podbean account that's called WAM Cast as well, so you can go to Podbean and subscribe there. It's a big site for podcasts and stuff like that. Anyway, we will go on to the next video, and just to make it clear for everyone, the way we're doing this is that I'm going to be picking out these things as separate reports after the fact, editing them up, and then putting them up as separate videos later on. But you get to watch us screw up live, so congratulations on that. I hope you enjoy, and we'll get back to questions. Super chats help a lot, so if you send super chats, we'll definitely see your comment. We'll be able to answer it, talk to you on air, and we really appreciate it.
It goes
it's literally
to the Josh
only
New
thing
Computer
to mess
Fund.
up.
It goes to the Josh New Computer Fund. So I don't know if you want to get into that. I mean, this was a calamity of errors to get to the point we're at just right now.
Oh man, we spent about 2 hours. We spent literally about 2 hours trying to get this live stream to work because one computer wasn't working, then the other one, then Tim's, which is a great computer, just stopped working. All because my laptop crashed about 2 months ago, and I can't do anything on these computers anymore, which is why most of our live streams have been like me talking to my phone. So it's been a whole bunch of problems. So GoFundMe, Patreon, Subscribestar, and Super Chats all make it possible for me to continue doing these videos because honestly, it's a nightmare. It's an absolute nightmare. But anyway, let's get to the next news story here, Tim. I'm going to pull it up right away, and we're going to go into the VIX story, Tim. So let's pull that up. All right. So as this Zero Hedge article says, someone big was utterly blown the F out. Here's the reason behind today's unprecedented VIX move. And we're going to go to Tim Picciott soon over this, but I'm going to go into the article just a little bit. As it says, there was a bizarre moment this afternoon when in the 40 minutes heading into the final hours of trading, the VIX kept rising and rising, preventing the S&P from doing its sworn duty of spiking higher into the next weekend. And then just after 3:10 p.m. Eastern or 12:10 Pacific, the VIX collapsed, plunging as much as 14 vols from 54.39, the highest print since Lehman, to 40.84, the low for the day, and unleashing another unprecedented stock buying cascade, which almost sent the Dow green. What happened, it says, and you can see the chart there, it says, what happened? As a following chat session between three individuals, which includes a former CME index option trader X, all of whom wish to remain anonymous, lays out, what happened is that the VIX ramped as a major Chicago market maker was caught in the infamous gamma short squeeze, which forced them to keep buying the VIX as the VIX soared. In the process, ending the VIX even higher, only to get margin called out of their position by their clearing firm, puking the entire position I hate that word, while liquidating anything they could and unleashing the VIX selling avalanche and the 700 Dow point rally. Regular readers will recognize this pattern. It is what happened, only not with the VIX by ES back in February 2017, when the Catalyst Hedged Futures Strategy Fund pushed the entire market higher when it itself was caught in a similar gamma trap, and which this January was finally busted for fraud. Below the full chat laying out what happened, and you can see it there. I'm not going to go into all of that. It's just a bunch of looks like people on 4chan talking. Anyway, let's go to Tim here. Tim, I wanted to hear your thoughts on this latest news regarding the VIX. Obviously, it's it's just I can't even get to the bottom of it. There's just so much craziness happening in the markets and from every angle lately. What do you think?
Well, that one that you mentioned back in February 2017, it's funny because well, this part's not funny, but I had a client who had most of her money with me, some money with another advisor. Her other advisor had, it was either in that, it was in a fund like that one. There's a few of them that blew up in that time frame. And literally her account went to zero. So everyone who, there was like maybe 5 or 6 different mutual funds or closed-end funds out there. They all went to zero. Wow. And not to give myself a big pat in the back, but the week before that, I was on my friend Ernest Hancock's show, and he said, what's the dumbest thing someone could do right now with their investments? And I think at the time, the VIX was trading for like 9 or 10. And I go, well, if you're short the VIX right now, that's probably the dumbest thing you could possibly do. And literally 2 weeks later, it did another one of these things where it shot up. But essentially, you've got people who are trading on margin, trading on leverage. And so when these things start, getting away from them, it's sort of like if you're in the casino and all of a sudden, you lose on red, then you bet red again, you double your bet, then you keep doubling your bet, and all of a sudden, eventually, when they say puking out, it's like eventually, you've only got so much you can mortgage, so much you can put on the table, and I believe that that's what's going on here. But to be people shorting the VIX, I mean, that has to be such a dumb idea. Basically saying, especially when we're at these record low levels, which we were previous to all of this. But I mean, the fact that we're above where we're at in Lehman Brothers. I mean, I don't know if we're going to go what you wanted to bring up next, but I know when it comes to the bond market, that's been absolutely insane lately. Let me get to a screen with both of us, and we are testing this out in real. Okay, that one didn't work. Okay, boom, there we go. So we got both of them up there. So right now I'm taking a look at the bonds. We have the 10-year U.S. Treasury at 0.77. I believe that is the lowest ever. I mean, definitely lower than what Obama had. Wow. Take a look at, and it was funny because about 3 months ago, they wanted me to, we're building a home right now. Not because I think this is not financial advice. It's mainly because my wife gave me 2 years to rent. So we sold our home that we bought at the low. And now my 2 years is up. And so I didn't lock the rate in when the lady's like, oh, you should definitely lock it in. And so the 30-year mortgage, what we saw the other day, it was, I believe yesterday was the largest one-day move ever in the 30-year mortgage. So 30 years right now, U.S. Treasury, 1.3%. Which is inverted from the 20-year, which is at 1.33%. And again, so if you want to lock your money up for 10 years, you get paid 0.77. Whereas if you want to lock it up for 30 years, you're at 1.3. And so maybe it's important to maybe ask, let people know like why this would actually happen, because people are probably thinking, that seems absolutely insane, and it is insane. And so the reason why you would have different types of inversions, so to speak, is that if the trajectory is potentially negative, so let's say you think, we are going to go into negative rates, well, then you would rather lock in something today that's positive. Right. And even though it's less, even though you're getting paid less on a, let's say you get paid less money to lock in money for 5 years than you do for 10. Well, the inversion's not super extreme right now, but I mean, so if you get paid more to lock in money for 20 years than you do for 30 years, if people are thinking that eventually everything's going to go closer to negative, they'd rather at least lock that in now. Classic recession sign. It's something that we were even pointing out probably like 8 months ago when the inversion started happening. I believe in Canada it's been inverted for over a year already.
The inversion in Canada actually makes the U.S. look better. It's been pretty bad.
Yeah, and so when you're taking a look at this, I mean, even that we've had all this all this. Let me see. Yeah, so U.S. mortgage rates plunged to record low. Going to try to get both of us here on the screen again, but now my internet connection, and even though I've got a 500 megabyte fiber cable directly plugged into my computer, now it's freezing trying to go to that article. But we've got, it's utter mayhem. U.S. mortgage rates plunged to record low. And so yesterday was at 3.29% is what closed out at right now. But you do have a lot of people refinancing. So the refinancing is, I'm guessing people are probably using it to pay down debt. And what you saw during previous so-called, I'll say this in air quotes, you'll say this expansions or recoveries, is that people would use those recoveries to pay down debt. You'd have companies that would go and pay down debt. But what's happened the past 11 years is that we've actually exploded the amount of debt we've had, both as consumers, both as companies, at the state. I mean, every single level, you've seen people just debt levels absolutely explode during this recovery because it wasn't a real recovery. All it was this papered over expansion of the monetary supply. I did go through in my AnarchoVegas talk, so I'm not going to go and rehash all this right now. I went through and we talked about how the Fed was actually monetizing the debt. So you could actually trace trace through the QSIP numbers and actually see how they're buying their own debt right now, which, Bernanke said that they would definitely not do that. And, it's all starting to melt down right now. And this is something where, no one really saw this whole COVID thing, coming out of the blue to be the catalyst. But whether this was going to happen or not, this is eventually going to happen. It's just, this is the linchpin that really kind of kicked everything.
Okay, well,
off.
Tim, let's go into that U.S. mortgage rate article, if you can get it up on the screen, and if it works. Either way, as the Zero Hedge article says, it's utter mayhem. U.S. mortgage rates plunged to record low. Rates for 30-year U.S. mortgages plunged to a record low on Thursday, forced lower by COVID-19 fears as the U.S. economy could be nearing recession as investors continue to make a mad dash into treasuries. And again, we've been in a recession for like 12 years now. It's just been papered over. I have to mention that in every video because I think it's important to in context here. But as it continues, it says the average rate on a 30-year fixed rate mortgage was 3.29%, down from 3.45% last week, and the lowest in nearly 5 decades, Freddie Mac said in a statement Thursday. The last time rates were this low, it was November 2012 at 3.31%. A quick drop in mortgage rates could boost home sales, but a fast-spreading virus that is starting to take a toll on West Coast cities could prove otherwise, from business shutdowns to quarantines to a collapse in air travel. The economy is rapidly slowing as people load up on food and masks to weather a possible pandemic. Matthew Pointon, a U.S. property economist at Capital Economics Limited, told Bloomberg that mortgage rates would probably extend a deadline or declines before hitting a floor. We noted on Wednesday that plunging rates had led to a massive refinance boom. And it was only a couple months ago, Tim, that we saw line up for subprime mortgages. I mean, we got the collateralized debt obligations, collateralized loan obligations. We have all of this, the packaging. I want to hear your thoughts on the potential of, not obviously it's a hyper localized issue, but when we see things like Los Angeles, when we see things like New York, when we see things like Seattle, and I mean, obviously coronavirus doesn't help with this in places like Seattle. What you think of the potential crash or pop of this bubble? Because it just seems like it's just been going on endlessly forever, and it just doesn't seem to want to let out. But it doesn't make any sense that after all this time we're still seeing this bubble not deflating.
Yeah, and I do apologize that we were not able to pull that article up on screen. Just whatever technical difficulties, it's frozen on a side-by-side of you and I right now. So, what really kind of struck me is I've had people ask me over the years. I mean, obviously one of the popular questions that we get asked quite a bit is, what is really going to be the precipitous to, or when do we know that we're in a, the big one, so to speak? And for me, it was when the Fed loses control. Now, I mean, eventually they're going to lose. I mean, I don't even think there should be a Federal Reserve. So let's just point that out there in case people are going to, comment in there. So they're going to lose control. And what I mean by that is, and they haven't done so yet, but they're starting to. And so we saw last week, there was an emergency 50 basis point rate cut. And then even despite that rate cut, the Dow that day was still down 700, still down the next day, down the next day. And so now here you are, the Fed having an emergency 50 basis point rate cut, which almost never happens. The last time it happened was 2008. And the market shrugged it off and still was crashing down. And so when you take a look at when the Fed lowers that rate, all it lowers is the Fed funds rate. Then you have to ask yourself, what is the Fed funds rate? Well, that's the rate that if you go to the Federal Reserve as a lender of last resort, as one of the big mega banks, to borrow money from the Fed. Now, the problem is no one in real life actually does that because there's a big stigma to doing that. So what they end up in real life, what happens is some banks have too much money. There's other banks that don't have enough money. And then the banks that have, let's say 11%, they'll go lend 1% to the banks that only have 9%. And then it's because they have to keep 10% overnight in reserves. All the Fed funds rate is if the banks, instead of going to each other, decide to go to the discount window, but they don't go to the discount window because there's a stigma to doing so. And so that, because of perception, affects everything else, but it's only really because of that perception, not in actuality that it really is actually that important. And so what the Fed is doing right now, they've got really 3 options. They can save either the stock market, the bond market, or actually they could probably save 2 of these. They could save either the bond market, the stock market, or the dollar. You can't save all 3 of these. And so what they're doing right now is they're obviously trying to save the stock market, but even that, and that's the one thing that's going down, that they're losing control of the most. And so the one thing that they're trying to save is the stock market, and that's the one thing that they're not saving right now at the moment. And so how they're quote unquote saving this is they're printing a whole bunch of money to influence the bond market. So by printing the money and buying up their own bonds, as we mentioned before during the debt monetization, what they're doing with that is they're artificially lowering the rates, as we just showed you guys earlier, the 10 years at 0.77, 30 years at 1.3, insanely low levels. And so that's good for the bond debtors out there. It's not good for the creditors. It's not good for if you've got your money in a pension fund that's paying out bonds. And so it's not good for the, so far it hasn't been good for the stock market. It's been good for the bond market if you are a debtor, because it keeps this whole carousel going, round and round and round. And then it's obviously long-term not very good for the dollar either. And so here we got the Fed, trying to save, all three of these. And really what they could be doing is end up effing it up for all three of them, and they're going to lose everything. And so maybe let me kind of back that statement up again, because maybe you could have the stock market actually go through the roof, but it might retain the same purchasing power. So let's say, if you sell a share of the S&P 500, maybe it buys, X amount of goods. Well, maybe the S&P goes up 5,000%, but it still buys the same X amount of goods, or maybe even less goods, because because a currency has been eroded, the currency has been devalued. And now I've seen different things, and I did have an article pulled up before where there's a new Fed rule to create a capital buffer tied to annual stress test, and I just have a couple quotes pulled out of here. And so this is designed to simplify the post-crisis capital framework for banks while maintaining the strong capital requirements that are hallmarks of the framework. And you got Federal Reserve Governor Lyle Brainerd, an Obama-era appointee, cast a sole dissenting vote against the plan, saying she believed it would reduce banks' required capital levels and the amount they set aside as a buffer above their regulatory requirements. In a statement, she said, "This gives a green light for large banks to reduce their capital buffers materially at a time when payouts have already exceeded earnings for several years on average." We've got other articles too, where Boston Fed's Rosengren says the Fed may soon have to buy stocks. And so for me, that's almost the most important article we have here. And I don't have it pulled up on screen right now, because right before we came on, there's a whole bunch of stuff with our computers that we're having
so many glitches.
So many glitches. And so what's going on now is
in the repost of this, Tim, I'll have it up on the screen.
Yeah. So with the Fed president, Boston Fed President Rosengren saying this, he's admitting that the Fed, either the Fed or one of their facilities, will go through and start buying stocks. So that's what they're doing in Japan right now. So in Japan, they're taking money, taking a keyboard, creating funny money out of thin air, using that funny money to then buy up their own stock market, which is actual fascism that I've been crying about, for about 5-6 years since I've been doing this. Yeah. That's the actual state and corporate merger. If you have the state using their funds to then buy up the corporations, that is actual fascism. So where's Antifa talking about all that? And now you've got the Fed, which is funny. If you go to the New York Fed website, which I was actually on there earlier today, actually they do have one article where one of their top guys is talking about the potential for negative rates. And then they always have articles about, well, we can't figure out why there's all this income inequality. When it's the Fed who are the ones printing the money that goes to the richest people in the world first, and they're the ones who are creating all this income inequality. But now you've got the Fed even coming out and saying, oh, we might have to go buy stocks like we're some banana republic, except we don't even get the benefit of having bananas. And it's like I've been thinking that was going to be like their final desperation move, and now you've got the Fed Boston president saying that they might go buy stocks. What do you think about this, Josh? It's almost like imagine telling somebody this 5 years ago or even 2 years ago that the Feds might have negative rates and they're going to start buying their own stocks. They're probably already through other avenues buying stocks.
Honestly. What's crazy is that we have been reporting on it for many years before you joined WAM as well, and you were talking about it a long time ago too. But John Snyson was talking about it many years ago with us, and we were just talking about how they would try to force rates up, but they wouldn't be able to get them up much, and then they'd end up dropping them out, and eventually they're going to go negative. And back in like 2014, 2015, when we were saying that, everyone's like, "Are you insane? That's obviously not going to happen." Let's rewind. The Fed dropped rates between 2008 to 2012 around 5.5% to mitigate what was a recession, what continues to be the recession, what has been papered over. And fast forward to today, at the rate we're currently sitting at, what happens when you go into negative entering into a crisis. I mean, I don't even know. It's at the point where emergency rate cuts. Okay, great. What's going to happen when it really comes down to the line here, where everything has already collapsed and you can't lower them anymore? What are you going to lower them eventually to 10, minus 10? I mean, it's stupid. It doesn't even make sense. So we're at a point in history where if you told people, say 70 or 80 years ago that this was happening, never mind that. Go back to the 80s and tell people that we'd be in negative interest rate territory, like early 80s. Tell people that. They'd be like, "You're insane. That's a conspiracy theory. That's absurd. That's never going to happen." Because remember how high interest rates were way back when. And honestly, we've been warning about this for a while. We showed all the examples. We showed all the evidence, and people didn't listen to us. They called us crazy. They said we're playing Chicken Little. It was all fear mongering. And meanwhile, we're just trying to tell people, stock up, prepare. Insure your wealth. I mean, it's not crazy. And obviously, this also comes down greatly to personal responsibility and individual sovereignty and, responsibility and freedom play hand in hand. You can't have one without the other. Tim obviously is a financial advisor. I am not. So this is all just opinion, by the way. The whole video, all of it's opinion. But with that said, there's more solutions than there are problems. You can check the links below if you wish to work with Tim or become a client of Tim's, because obviously he has had a good success rate, a really great success rate, and
even
does
now,
a lot of alternative stuff.
I mean, even now. And so, I mean, I'm not saying this to brag, because what we want to do is we want to be able to help people out. And when I was saying this before the market went down, is we want to help people. And so last year we got almost all the upside. And so for people like one of the maiden comments is like, "Oh, if we were with you, we would have lost money." But they didn't realize the strategy that we're running. And so last year, I mean, the S&P was probably up. So we're in the up market, we're probably going to lag the S&P probably by a little bit. In a down market, we're going to lose nowhere near as much. And in the sideways market will be the only thing that we probably lose out on. But last year we're up about 25%. This year, most of our clients are still positive year to date, fully invested into the stock market based upon the strategy. Now, the problem is, to run that strategy right now, it's, would have been a lot better if you guys got it 3 weeks ago, because now, we've got to sort of retool our tactics over here and how we get people into this strategy, because it costs, 200% more to do what we were trying to do just a month ago. And so for the people who got in this, they have to ride it all the way up. And the first time I ever talked about this on video, and I'm not saying this to brag, I'm saying this because people are entrusting me with their life savings. That's a big responsibility. And you can't just go off, somebody, what they're saying. What they're saying now in hindsight. Go back to if you guys want to go to my channel, I have a Tim Picciott, the Liberty Advisor channel, where I've got, videos over the past 3.5 years. They were Facebook Lives, and I repurposed them as YouTube videos. And so what we had gone through is, the first time I ever talked about this on video was October 3rd, 2018. The first time I ever talked about the current strategy was the day before Jerome Powell said we're on autopilot. So if you were with me back then, you would have lost almost nothing when the market went down in Q4 of 2018. You got almost all the upside last year. And then right now we had positions that went up nearly 200% the past month because of all the craziness that was going on. And so those positions that went up 200% then offset the other general market that was going down. And so, we had some other gold positions too that helped out. And so we run individual portfolios for people, not to make this a big commercial, but people always want to say, what should you do? Well, I basically spent my entire adult life thinking basically this is the moment that we've been preparing for. And okay, if it's not the moment and they're able to get this whole debt carousel, rolled on for another year or two, then okay, our strategy is going to work well in that environment too. Because how this ends is, the Fed cannot afford to have the stock market go down, because if the stock market goes down, all the pensions, they're screwed. Because in 2008, the average baby boomer was the oldest baby boomer was 62 years old. Now, what are we, 12 years later? Now they're 74. Now they're being forced to take money out of their stock market. And not only that, is now when these baby boomers pass away, what they used to be able to do, what they could do is they could give their IRAs to their kids and their grandkids, and then their kids could stretch those out for the remainder of their lifetimes. Well, now there's a new rule to help you out. And that new rule that helps you out is it forces the beneficiaries to take out all their money within 10 years. That's a brand new rule on the law, on the books as of this year. Most people have no idea that's even on the books right now. This is the law of unintended consequences. So I'm sounding like a true New Yorker, I guess, with that one. But with this is the government's thinking, okay, well, let's say you got $1 million in your 401k, and now you've got and then you got two sons, and both your sons now are going to get $500,000. They've got each of them have got to take that out every single year. It's going to increase their tax rate. The government's going to get more tax money. So they're probably scheming over here like, oh yeah, this is a way we can, get one over on the people. But that's going to create then forced selling in the stock market, which would then create a downward pressure on the stock market. And so how do we counteract this? And so if you're the Fed, you're thinking the only tool in our toolbox is to lower rates, get, encouraging more borrowing, which a lot of the borrowing is being done by the companies. And the companies are then using that borrowed money to then buy back their own stock and creating this whole cycle. But eventually, if you all of a sudden start losing money, or your rating goes from, let's say, triple B down to double B, and now you can't even borrow money because now you're in junk status, it creates this whole cascading effect. And so the cascading effect could come from the terrible demographics we have in America, because now all of a sudden we've got 10,000 seniors a day who are taking out, starting to turn 65, who are taking out their Social Security, taking out their Medicare. We've got nowhere near the replacement ratio to population to be able to ever pay for that. And as soon as and so getting back to what happened in 2008 is we had time. We had 10 years, 11 years for this recovery to happen before the baby boomers had to start taking their money out in mass. Now there's no more time. So now the next time when the pensions go down, they're going to get absolutely walloped by sequence of return risk. There's no way to get out of this. There's no easy button. There's basically no optimistic scenario, I guess, unless you have, gold and silver and Bitcoin. You've already prepared with all these other things, or you're in my strategy beforehand because you're going to make money. But this is not about me. It's not about taking a victory lap, because we're trying to save people money. We're trying to help preserve their purchasing power, and we're trying to make sure they have good retirements.
Well, Tim, there's that old saying, it's hard to free fools from the chains they revere. And that obviously is the case. And not only fools, it's far too often the average person, not a fool, not an idiot, knows what's going on, knows what's happening around them in the world, and are just unwilling to take precautions. They put it off. And then when everything comes down, that's when they want to suddenly start saving themselves, and it doesn't work out that way. But anyway, make sure everyone that's watching to check those links below and press like on this video. And obviously you can become a client with Tim by looking below in the description. There are options, lots of options. Anyway, Tim, let's go on to another news story. Are you able to bring up up the articles on the screen yet?
No, we need to maybe have BitChute as a sponsor, because I can't get any of these up. No, but I don't know. I can't. None of these. I don't know what is frozen right now in a side by side of both of us right now.
So if anyone is wondering how targeted we are here at WAM, just remember that every computer I ever get within like moments of using it is like destroyed. All of everything on YouTube demonetized, censored, shadow banned. At the same time, I had a laptop, paid a fortune for it years ago, invested so much into it, and a year and a half later, it crashes. And I bring it to people who are specialists and some of the best people on earth for fixing computers. And they're like, I have never seen that before. Honestly, it's so ridiculous. Then before we went live here on this show, I had all these issues on one laptop, then I go to another laptop, and then it froze and all these problems. And then finally, when it starts working, Tim, who has a great laptop, everything starts going wrong there. So make sure to press like, check the links below, help us. Oh, we need a new laptop, or else this is insane. We do have a super chat from Chad Myers. Thank you so much, Chad. Those super chats are seriously important. Keep us up and running, and I can't thank you enough. And as he says, geomagnetic polar reversal. What's an update on it just went up the chat. Let me scroll up here so I could see it. What's an update on the position? Just a suggestion, if you haven't looked, might want to keep an eye on that. Ben Davidson does an amazing job with space weather news. Yeah, I actually, absolutely. So the magnetic pole reversal, I actually believe it happens a lot more than people say, at least to a semi-range. Graham Hancock goes into that a lot in Magicians of the Gods, which I have behind me on my shelf. If you probably can't see that. Anyway, yeah, I mean, I can't really add much to that because I'm not an expert on it, but I do know there's a lot of evidence with Serbia having once had tropical weather and Antarctica having tropical weather. Not that long ago, palm trees found in the ice and all that kind of stuff. We obviously are in a range where things shift at a rapid scale, at least as far as magnetism goes. So, yeah, that's a very interesting, situation that I do want to go into further in a report style where I actually have an expert on and I go into that. I can reach out to Ben Davidson. But I appreciate the question discussion, and I appreciate the super chat. It goes a long way. I can't tell you how much $10 does here at WAM, because honestly, we're in the negatives as far as WAM goes. It's just they've demonetized us to the point where it just doesn't. There's no point almost even monetizing. It's gone. We don't have any money, and also they shadow ban everything. To the extent where even if you type in the exact title half the time, with the World Ultra Media after, you still won't find it. They disappeared our Atlantis in the Desert documentary, which I went through minefields in Africa to produce, and they hid it from the search after I went on Sam Tripoli's podcast, Tinfoil Hat, which went really well, by the way. But I put
definitely check it out.
Yeah, so it was gone on most people's feeds. Then I made a post on Facebook and Float about it, and suddenly it popped up on half of the people's feeds and half other, it didn't. And I have video footage of this. I have evidence of this. I have all the evidence you need of this shadow banning. And I went to YouTube and they're like, no, that didn't happen. I'm like, I have video on two phones of two different people's phones signed into different accounts, including signed into the WAM account itself. I talked with Bitcoin Ben a few months ago in Las Vegas. Bitcoin Ben was saying something about being influenced by this channel to start doing YouTube videos. It worked out really well for him. I'm really happy with how that worked. But he's like, you haven't made videos in like 2 years. I'm like, what are you talking about? He's like, I just can't find you. He looked up World Alternative Media right in front of me on his phone, and I was on the 6th page. No videos. The channel itself was on the 6th page. So make sure to go and subscribe to Whamcast, which is linked below, our new podcast channel, which we'll be posting on in the near future. Whamcast, all linked below. But also, most importantly, find us on float.app. That's flote.app. It's under my beautiful face on the screen there that you can check out. And I definitely recommend people go there, because that's the future of social media, replacing Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Twitch, Tumblr, Reddit, and Patreon all in one, with encrypted private messaging, monetization on the videos, super chats on the live streams in crypto, pledges in crypto, and no algorithms. So it's all about reach at the end of the day, reaching people. And you cannot be shadow banned on Float. So make sure to check that out. And, if you want to invest in Float as well, just contact me. There's a lot of options there on the table, but it's really waiting to overwhelm the social media industry, and I'm really excited about where that's going. The good old days, says Tim, get off your phone. Tim was looking for something. Don't mind him being on his phone. He's allowed to. I
was checking to make sure that the stream was okay. Yeah. So.
Yeah, I'm on my laptop here looking at the stream, and it looks good. Frank Leisner says, checking in from Phoenix, Arizona. Okay, so you're close by, Tim. Let's see. We got a few other people. Greetings from the Soviet Kanukistan. Absolutely. My homeland of Kanukistan, my motherland of communism. There's a reason why I'm not there. Mr. A says, I heard that Josh's parents used to be millionaires. No, they never were millionaires.
In Zimbabwe. So.
Yeah, oh my God. That's Anam Pashenta. He's just messing with me. Helen Kat says, sus obs. I don't know what that means. Chad Myers says, thank you very much. Make sure to press like, guys, on this video. Pressing like makes a big difference.
People have asked if I think that if 50 years ago, if man walked on the moon. I certainly don't believe that the phone call and all the other BS was made, because even today, like here we are having problems, in 2020 with technology.
Tim, it's like the cell phone call on 9/11 from the airplanes. All these people calling people on a cell phone, like what? How? It is just so. How does anyone believe that? I can't do that today. It's ridiculous. But yeah, I don't really agree with the official story regarding the moon either. The Van Allen belt whole situation, but I'm also not a physicist or whatever, so I cannot say 100%. But I
had a hard enough time trying to convince people of things that you can absolutely be convinced over, like trying to convince people that the Federal Reserve is private, let alone trying to get into all these other issues. So for me,
then once you convince them that it is private, then you have to explain to them it doesn't really matter at the end of the day. It's a fact that they're printing money via legal tender laws and charging you interest on it. And then people are like, oh, okay. There's like a whole lot that you have to kind of build up with people. And not that long ago, Tim, I bumped into someone who was a Hillary Clinton supporter. Still, how are you a Hillary Clinton supporter in the year 2020? Like, how does that even happen? I mean, how far do you have to explain things to someone like that? Like, you just basically have to just give up, because, like, how do you, like, build up facts to this person and give them an insight into morality and logistics. It's just it's beyond recognition. I mean, Hillary Clinton is like saying you like Caligula. It just doesn't make sense. Everyone in the chat's telling me to buy toilet paper. We'll get right on that. Yeah, I saw that Costco ran out of toilet paper, and then they promised that they'll get some back in like a few centuries. Like they put the wrong date on the paper. They said in like 2065 or no 2365 or something.
25,065.
Yeah, that's a long way to wait. I mean, I think in that point you just kind of use leaves.
I did order some toilet paper on Amazon the other day, so I've got a bunch of my wife's like, why do we have all this toilet paper in our garage? I'm like,
maybe you got it from the Amazon facility in Seattle they found all those corona patients.
My initials are TP, so who knows? I'm all set. So.
Yeah, great. Gary K says all governments are fake puppets. Agreed. They're also dangerous, but mostly because of fear, not so much because of action. Yeah, I want to go into other stories, but Tim can't bring the stories up on the screen because there's a rather strange glitch. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add in the articles after in editing and go into another news story here.
Put them in the chats. Put them in the chats if you wanted to. So
what's that?
You put it maybe in the chats and let people know if they wanted to go follow along in real time. Might be too much work. Yeah. I don't know. It's interactive. So
it's interactive until they accidentally exit out of the video and can't get back, and then we lose viewership. Anyway, here we go. This is the first article. I'm going to post it in the chat. Try to open it in a new tab so you don't exit out of the chat. And press like on this video if you haven't already, and check the links below. And go subscribe to WAMcast, WAM space cast, linked below as well. Again, open in a new window. Anyway, I'm going to get into this article here. It says, out of zero hedge. Stop calling it a stutter. Here are dozens of examples of Biden's dementia symptoms. And as the article goes into, it's very bizarre and dissonant how there are currently two separate and non-overlapping lines of criticism going on against the campaign of establishment-anointed Democratic presidential candidate Joe Biden. There are the perfectly accurate criticisms regarding the right-wing militaristic policy positions of the politician Joe Biden used to be, and then there are the equally accurate criticisms of Biden's handlers and Democratic Party leadership for wheeling out the dementia-addled husk of a man he currently is to run for the world's most powerful elected office. Well, we can't forget that Ronald Reagan had signs of Alzheimer's as far back as during his presidency.
Hi, I'm Joe Biden, and I forgot this message.
Yeah, all right. We got Tim chiming in here as it continues in this article. It says, these two debates do not interweave because they are not relevant to one another. It doesn't matter what political positions a dementia victim once had. What matters is taking care of him and keeping him away from hazards like sharp objects and nuclear launch codes. It's impossible to know what actual political convictions still remain held within a mind that can no longer lucidly string thoughts together anyway. And I do want to add that, why does anyone have a nuclear launch code? I mean, isn't that worth asking? Anyway, carrying on. I mean, Alzheimer's, dementia, or totally functioning person should not have nuclear launch codes.
Did you see it was, I don't know, maybe a few years ago, it came out that for like a decade, the nuclear launch code was like 000, or it was like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. It was maybe for the people who have dementia. Yeah, it was password. Yeah, that came out. Yeah, it came out like a while ago. That I don't know. Anyways, continue.
FTP. As it continues here, it says, I hate doing this. I hate repeatedly writing about the obvious and undeniable fact that an old man is exhibiting obvious and undeniable symptoms of incipient dementia. It isn't fun and it doesn't feel good, but the alternative is laying down and allowing the Democratic Party and allied media to gaslight people into believing it's not a thing, as they are currently doing. At a certain point, there needs to be a serious, empathetic conversation about Biden's relatively frequent, confused, irritable inability to complete coherent thoughts, as Cody Johnson writes on Twitter. It's not about a stutter. Watching him speak a mere 4 years ago makes that clear. Hope this happens soon. And they go through a whole list. I'm not going to read this whole article, but as it says, here's the Mayo's Clinic list of symptoms for a stutter, also known as a stammer. difficulty starting a word, phrase, or sentence, prolonging a word or sounds within a word, repetition of a sound, syllable, or word, brief silence for certain syllables or words, or pauses within a word, broken word, addition of extra words such as if difficulty moving to the next word is anticipated, excess, I just did excess tension, tightness, or movement of the face or upper body to produce a word, anxiety about talking, limited ability to effectively communicate. And here is what the Mayo Clinic's list of dementia symptoms: memory loss, which is usually noticed by a spouse or someone else, difficulty communicating or finding words, difficulty with visual or and spatial abilities, such as getting lost while driving. It's not funny. Difficulty reasoning or problem solving, difficulty handling complex tasks, difficulty with planning and organizing, difficulty with coordination and motor functions, confusion and disorientation. And let's compare this to Joe Biden. I can't play the videos on the screen because, for obvious reasons, even with what we know now, what is fair use, we just can't play
and it's
the
a
video.
shame because that one video is so funny. If you guys haven't seen it, there's an 8-second clip of Biden trying to recite the Declaration of Independence, and he starts off saying something like, we hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created. There you go. You know the thing, and like that is literally like what he says. Like for the 8-second video, like he can't even string together the Declaration of Independence. Incredible.
Well, and we know all these gaffes. I'm putting some up on the screen. I'm not going to go into all of them because they have dozens, and this article is way too long. But I do want to note, like, calling people a dog-faced pony soldier. What? Like, are you in 1946 in a Western? Like, who does that? And then calling people fat when, like, a fat guy asks him a question at a town hall, and he's like, "Listen, fat." It's like, fat? You just call this guy fat? And then he just starts calling him a liar. He just keeps calling people liars.
It's like all the things that you can criticize Trump about, at least like the left and all the fake news criticize Trump about, are like all the exact same things that you can criticize Obama about. So I mean, I actually think it'd be great if Biden gets in there. And I wrote this a few months ago, where in this alternate reality where Biden wins the presidency and then Biden ends up getting getting impeached for all the Ukraine stuff. So it's like you got Trump on Ukraine, okay, you got Biden on Ukraine. Trump is supposedly racist, and yeah, Biden wrote the 94 crime bill, and even the last debate was trying to get in and bragging about being the one who set up all the 94 crime courts, and which negatively infected black people and minorities more than anything Donald Trump has ever done. And you just go like down the line. I mean, okay, Trump inappropriately touches people, and you got Joe Biden obviously sniffing little girls' hair and doing all this other stuff, and even talk about confusion. I haven't seen this, but people are telling me that apparently he went to his wife and called it his sister, and he goes over to his sister and calls it his wife. So I mean, talking about easily forgetting, calling your sister your wife, and then not being able to correct yourself on that one.
Like, I don't think anyone is qualified to be president. I don't think anyone's qualified to lead anyone. But I mean, it's almost like it would be funny if it wasn't so sad, because I mean, a lot of people are obviously affected by dementia, and Alzheimer's is a terrible thing to go through. I've seen it happen to people. It's a horrible, horrible thing. Very sad. But Joe Biden, I really don't care about at all. And so, I mean, like, from the kitty sniffing and telling kids to rub the leg hair in a pool, like,
I forgot about gross. That one.
And there's one of the things that it shows in the article is, and you mentioned it before, Tim, it says, and I quote, "We hold these truths to be self-evident. All men and women created by the the thing." And then there's another quote here where he says, "Super Thursday." And number 4 is, and I quote, "I'm a Democratic candidate for the United States Senate. Look me over. If you like what you see, help out. If not, vote for the other give me a look, though, okay?" Or
it's like he's like a corpse. It's like he's like a corpse, just like being like trotted out there, and like people are just like a little marionettes above him, telling him what to say, and he just is not on point. He's been in there since he was 29 years old.
Biting his wife's finger. He bit his wife's finger just randomly. Just bit it. What's that? He's not well. He's not well. And one thing is for sure, that he needs to be called out for all the kitty sniffing and groping. He needs to be called out for this kind of stuff. He needs to be called out for all of his crime bills, all the horrible things he's been involved in politics, the warmongering, the deceptions, the lies under Obama and before. And I mean, 44 years in politics says a lot. Also, he's like, no one can do what I do. I'm going to get things done after 44 years in politics. Okay. And, you know, just there's so many other things where it gets to the point where I can't even, I don't know what to even add to it anymore. But it's actually kind of scary how crazy he is. He was telling people he doesn't even seem to want to win. He was saying at a town hall the other day, I am going to raise your taxes. All these people talking about lowering taxes. No, I'm going to raise the taxes. I want good things to be good and bad things to be bad. It's just terrible. I'm going to move on to another article here. And again, for those watching, you can't see it on the screen. It'll be added later. Unfortunately, there's a glitch. But as this article says, Trump sets up for bruising campaign against Biden. And even the Drudge Report, for some reason, claimed that it was going to be an issue for Trump to beat Biden. How? I mean, how is it going to be difficult? Moving on to another article here.
The Dow's at 15,000 by the election, which almost is. So what's crazy is from the peak to trough, the market could literally go down 50% and be above where we started last time. Or right around that same spot.
It's crazy. And I want to go into something else that kind of brings this all together, which isn't regarding Biden necessarily. It's more about how rigged this whole system is. As this Reason.com article says, DNC changes debate qualifications, excluding Tulsi Gabbard. Now, I'm not a fan of Tulsi Gabbard. I like some of the things she says about war and stuff like that. I'm not pro-gun control. I'm not pro, welfare. I'm not pro all that kind of stuff. But with that said, without a doubt, the establishment is going after Tulsi Gabbard. There's no doubt about it. As the article says, the Hawaiian representative's 2 delegates will no longer be enough to earn her a spot in the upcoming CNN Univision debate in Phoenix. And isn't it interesting how in any other case, it'd be like a woman is running for office. Let's get her in and support her and all that kind of stuff and call anyone that disagrees with her sexist. In this case, they're like anyone that supports Tulsi supports Syria and they support Putin
and Assad
and
toady.
All this craziness.
An Assad toady. The New York Times called her an Assad toady. And,
I know.
And a minority, and she's a minority too.
Gabbard called Trump Saudi Arabia's, you know what? And I love it. I love that. I love the fact that she can get along with Ron Paulers and people like that. I don't think people should support her. I don't think people should support statism or collectivism, period. But with that said, they're clearly going after her. And when they talk about women, until it comes to her, it tells you a whole lot about women must conform to what they think, what they believe. And that is pretty damn sexist if you ask me. And on top of that, everyone else could get into the debates until her. And they literally went out of their way to change the debate options like they did with Ron Paul so that she couldn't be in the debate. What does that tell you about this election? It's a scam. It's a fraud. It's a complete dog and pony show. It's a circus. And what would be the word for that? Bread and circuses, right? Because they don't need to give you entertainment that much anymore. People are pulling away from the entertainment industry en masse. People aren't watching movies anymore. But they are watching politics, and even without an opinion, they get identities. They repeat after me. Simon says that's what happens. And this is a great example of what we're seeing there. We're seeing them trying to prop up these candidates, Joe Biden versus Bernie Sanders, to compete against each other. Almost everyone dropped out at the same time, started supporting Biden against Bernie, because Bernie was winning. All these guys were winning, and then suddenly everyone drops out and Biden gets propped up. Like, if that isn't an obvious coup attempt, I don't know what is. And again, I don't support Bernie either, but it's obvious what they're doing here. They have an agenda. They want that agenda. They will simply focus on getting that agenda done and nothing else, and they'll do whatever it takes to make that happen. Tim, what do you think of all this?
Yeah, I have somebody right now in the chats asking me if I'm a Trump supporter. So, I guess if you go back to what happened in the 2016, I was going to pull for the Libertarian Party. Then all of a sudden, the Libertarian Party started, and I'm not really a big fan of any of these parties. And actually, I'm a delegate for the Libertarian Party right now for Arizona for 2020. But all of a sudden you had what happened is you had, what's his name, CFR, Council of Foreign Relations, Bill Weld, who came out and said that handguns are more dangerous than AR-15s, and AR-15s are dangerous, and then they're trying to say that force people to bake cakes and all this other stuff. And so finally, when the gun comment came out in August, I was like, you know what, this is sort of an exception. I'm going to come out and I'm going to fully support Donald Trump. So I made a Facebook page called, at the time, Libertarian Advisor, and then decided to go full on to support Donald Trump. I ended up reaching about 10% what the Russians did by myself, gained a following of over 32,000 people within 3 months, and now I actually have less people following me today than I did back then. And as soon as Trump got in there, I said, listen, if he goes and he starts doing all the same Federal Reserve crap that Obama was doing, then I'm out. I don't care if he does 1,000 things that I like, but if he does not follow through in the Federal Reserve, then I don't care. He immediately starts going and bombing Syria, and that's when I had a life-size cutout of Donald Trump that somebody gave me, and that's when I took it and I gave it to somebody else. And as Josh goes and chokes as I say this, and then my daughter was born on his first day in office, and I was wearing a Trump shirt. So I mean, you can't go around saying I'm some Trump derangement syndrome person when I did, just a tremendous amount to try to get him elected. But now it's not about Donald Trump.
Yeah, well, I
defended
anything. Him a lot too. I mean, I defended him all through the when it was right, but that was because you didn't see actions yet. And again, I'm an anarchist. I don't believe in any of these guys. They're all criminals, all of them. I'm going to stay consistent with that, and I always will. All of them are criminals. Even if someone completely agreed with me on everything and got into office, they're still a criminal because they're still stealing people's money and enforcing it by collectivism. But with that said, I defended him a lot, but only because the news was making up a lot of nonsense about Trump, so I called that out. But that doesn't mean I like Trump, and Trump is obviously pushing a whole bunch of communist agendas with war. People keep forgetting. They're like, they only report on what's good. I'll bring you back here. For example, Syria. This is a great example. They said Trump is pulling out of Syria. CNN attacked him. The left is actually very pro-war. They started attacking him, and I'm like, let's sit back for a second. The military-industrial complex is in charge. No matter what a president does, it's not going to change anything. And then, sure enough, like 5 days later, he said that he's actually going to stay in Syria to protect Israel and protect the world. His exact quotes, and no one reported it on the left or right because. And it's very simple, because they're both trying to play people against each other. They don't actually care about what's the real news. Even if he does something wrong, CNN doesn't actually care about what he does wrong. They care about certain things he does wrong to create a certain image. Now you move on from that, and he says he signs this deal with the Taliban, and they're going to pull out of Afghanistan after an 18-year war. Great, sounds amazing.
I'll believe that when I see it.
Be very careful. 14 months is a long period of time to wait, and anything could come up and then, create order out of chaos and then prolong it. And on top of that, he also was supposed to pull out of Iraq a long time ago, and he still has security forces and all these people there aggressing against Iran and Russia, which, by the way, he's supposed to be in bed with, even though he's aggressing against them. And then on top of that, you have the issue, it's a very real issue that I think people should talk about. Again, the news not reporting it, is that the Taliban, U.S. resumed operations bombing at the Taliban. The Taliban's shooting back at them. No one's reporting on that. But he was supposed to pull out, and he signed this great landmark deal with the Taliban. Then why is it still happening? Why are they still shooting at each other like a day after they signed that agreement? This is why I don't buy this. And they only report one part of the news and not the other on both sides, left and right. And this is why we in independent media are here to break this down, so we have a concise, consistent message, not just whatever benefits us most. Anyway, I really appreciate everyone commenting here. I'm going to go into some questions right away here. I want to see what people have to say. I'm going to be cutting these super weird when I repost them. But anyway, let's see. Rolf Steiner says Afghanistan war is still going. Absolutely. Helen Katz says Josh is quite cute. Well, I appreciate that. I disagree, but whatever.
You're next to me, so it makes you look better. I don't know.
Frank Leisner says, Josh, Tim, don't fall for cash carrying the virus. Bankers are trying to avoid bank runs. They know they're in trouble. If that's the case, just don't get the mail out of your mailbox either. Yeah, you see, this is one thing I really wanted to report on today. I totally forgot to put it in the queue, and we'll do it at another point. But they're clearly creating a cashless society out of this coronavirus fear. They're utilizing it to create a cashless society. They're burning money in mass, the yuans in China, and it's exactly what China has always wanted, linked in with the Trilateral Commission, with creating a technocratic super state. So I have no doubt that that's exactly what's going on here. I know Tim has to get going very shortly here. MP says, you go, Josh, and then wrote, Tim's okay. Come on, give Tim some love. Make sure to press like on this video. I really appreciate Tim is really putting together this whole thing here with this live stream, which is really important. Unfortunately, there's glitches happening today, and we couldn't keep the articles on the screen. But you know, this is a work in progress, and we're going to do what we can. Tim's also going to be working with We Are Change, Luke Rudowski, right away, so you can look for that. And of course, if you want to become a client of Tim's, who's been doing amazingly well in the markets, check the links below. And for multiple other reasons, check the links below. GoFundMe,
and
Patreon,
I want to say every single person that's come on through WAM, I've personally talked with. I've been the one that has gotten them into everything, did all the paperwork with them. So I'm not shuffling you off to other people. And pretty soon it will be at that point where I'm only going to be taking on, you know, a certain amount of clients that I'll be talking with. But right now, I mean, everyone that's coming on, even people with $50,000, $25,000, I've been the one who've been handling everything for them. So I haven't been shuffling them off to other people. You are getting me, and you know, probably 3 months from now, 6 months from now, you're not going to get me. And I've only probably gotten just a behind the curtain, maybe 10 clients from WAM. So out of 100,000, I mean, if that number got up to 20, then I'm using those resources to then hire. We just hired, we got someone in trial right now who's then helping cut up the different videos and putting in different things for social media, and then getting video editors. So I'm taking the money that I'm getting from WAM, reinvesting it back into WAM. And so really that's one of the ways where it's a win-win-win. So I mean, literally, if we got up to where, you know, 30 people from WAM became clients, I mean, that's literally would be game changing. So if you have your money at one of these big brokerages right now, I mean, and you've got an advisor who don't know their name, they're not calling you, they're embarrassed, they lost a bunch of money. It's a win-win-win for everybody, because I'm using that money to then pump it back into WAM to then, and it's not about me.
Yeah. Did you see 181% gains during the crash?
Yeah, so our put options at one point were up 181%. We bought them for like $16, and then they were trading at like $47, $48. And so we were in a situation where, because of, and what I would do is I think that one of the best videos I've put out recently has been the one I did with Kirk Chisholm. I forgot what the exact name of that is. It came out last week, got super shadow banned. I think less than 2,000 people have watched it. That's probably, if you guys want to know like dynamite information, where I interrupted every now and then because I did back-to-back podcasts with John, and then immediately got off that one, went right into another one. And so it was just not easy to do, guys. And so that one, absolute bomb information, fire information. You guys need to go see that one. And that's the guy who's helping run our clients' money. I don't even mention the fact that the other person who is on my team here is a top 10 most influential advisor in America, according to Investopedia. So you've got me and you get him. And so, I mean, and we got the track record. We absolutely performed amazingly during this last downturn. I've been telling people on camera what the strategy is, and that strategy is literally one of the only things that worked out the past couple weeks. And so how much more proof do you need? Go back to my October 3rd client video. Go back to all these other things. I mean, I had a video called The Trump Effect, Why Good News is Bad News, which was a presentation I made January 2017 that said, listen, the stock market is going to go up because everyone is going to create this Pygmalion effect where everyone thinks things are going to get better relative to Hillary, which I think Trump relative to Hillary is a better choice. However, what is then going to happen is it's then going to give the Federal Reserve no more excuses to cut rates. And then when they don't have the excuses not to leave rates flat anymore, everything is going great. So then we're going to be forced to have rate hikes. Those rate hikes are then going to pop the bond bubble. That bond bubble is then going to pop the stock market bubble. And then that's exactly what played out. And then I came out with a video December 28th, 2018 saying, called When's the Next Rate Cut. It was actually a client video, and I then later re-released that. And so I'm not Monday morning quarterbacking this, guys, and it's not about, oh, what a good job I'm doing over here. It's because if you are going to entrust somebody with their money, you need to know that they're not just full of crap, that they're actually are walking the walk, and that they're actually have your best interest in mind.
Wait, I don't want to give my money to someone that's full of crap?
Well, I mean, you had Goldman Sachs, who, I mean, literally in 2008, when they were getting grilled on camp and about their Abacus deal, were saying, you know, we need to get this dog, SHI, you know what, off of our plates, and then, you know, sell it to AIG, and then AIG has to get bailed out because they then were the ones who were the counterparty risk to Goldman Sachs. So literally, we had to give money to AIG so that when AIG could then give the money back over to Goldman Sachs, because at the time the Treasury Secretary was Hank Paulson, who was former Goldman Sachs. And so, and then even now you got Mnuchin, and then we got Trump in there, and then we got Mnuchin in there as Goldman Sachs, and Trump's entire universe right now is surrounded by Goldman Sachs people. And you've got Goldman Sachs has done incredibly well during the Trump presidency. JP Morgan's done incredibly well, even though Jamie Dimon did have emergency heart surgery a couple days ago. So how fitting that, you know, as we've got emergency rate cuts, and then he's getting emergency cut up as well. And then you've got the banks coming out, and now they've relaxed the capital rules for the banks. right as all this stuff is going down. So I do need to get going. And my wife, wanted me to stop this like before we even got it going. So we had problems here. And some people are saying that they do like me, so I do appreciate those comments. And it's not super easy trying to run this and trying, because what we're doing is behind the scenes. Basically, we're running like a TV production while trying to talk as well. And so we don't have, if we start getting more clients, we can then have somebody that behind the scenes where their job is to run all this. I mean,
yeah, and with that, so make sure to check the links below for that. Lots of success stories there, but also like just subscribe to us on Whamcast, which is linked below. I've seen only 5 or 4 people since this cast begun start actually subscribing there. So go subscribe there. Go subscribe to Whamcast. It's linked below. It's another channel that is going to be for podcasts. We're going to have long form interviews with great guests and everything. Also, make sure to press like on the video. GoFundMe, Patreon, Subscribestar. We need you guys more than ever. Seriously, we need that to be able to get a better production quality, bigger guests, be doing it more often, not have to worry about all these glitches, and we can get out an insane amount of content, so much that it'll be impossible to possibly ever go through. And we want to get to that point where we have a full channel bringing you great content all day, every day with great guests, and we can get seriously big guests. The problem is technology is not working for us right now. My laptop crashed 2 months ago. I'm dealing with absolutely garbage laptops
let me put this in perspective. Right now, I pay more in health. My healthcare premium right now for me and my family is actually more than what Josh gets paid on YouTube these days. That's not even an exaggeration. My healthcare premium is more than what Josh is getting paid on YouTube because we've been so shadow banned right now. And if you guys also want to check out my channel as well,
95% demonetized at this point.
I am 3 subscribers away from 500 subscribers, which is be a big milestone for me. So there actually is a Tim Picciott, the Liberty Advisor YouTube channel. I'm 3 away from the big 500. So that would be an awesome one too, if you guys can help get me over that 500 hump. And I think you've got
go press subscribe on Tim Picciott's channel. I just saw Teddy a bastard says I hit the dislike. Damn you, Teddy. Damn you. Anyway,
my middle name is Teddy. Does that help maybe them get a re-up on that one?
Now everyone's hitting. Don't hit dislike. Press like. Combat them, folks. Be the WAM army. We are going to come back to you guys with much more content, long form, short form, interviews, documentaries, all that. And I'm sitting on a bunch of documentaries that I can't release because I don't have time to put into it, because I don't have money to put into it. So anything is appreciated. GoFundMe, Patreon, Subscribestar, and of course, Bitcoin.
One away from 500. One away from 500. Who's it going to be? We appreciate it.
Go subscribe. Be the 500th on Tim Picciott's channel, and also subscribe to Whamcast. Link below. Help us out. Anyway, we really appreciate everyone joining us today. As always, you guys are the heartbeat of WAM, and I can't do it without any of you guys. So thank you so much for tuning in. Again, a big shout out to Chad Myers for that super chat earlier. We're going to get back at you guys with much more, and stay tuned, and maybe the next production will be a little bit more sturdy and a little bit less glitchy. But anyway, I appreciate it, Tim. Thank you for joining me today, Tim. And until next time.
Thank you for number 500. We just got it, so I definitely appreciate it.
All right.
So thank you. You guys are awesome.
You don't win a prize, but you get lots of good content. Anyway, appreciate it. Until next time, this is Josh Searson and Tim Picciott signing out from World Alternative Media. Find the truth. Be the change.
And actually, I have to do like a little Control-Alt-Delete action here because it's frozen. So we actually are still live right now, so we'll have to eventually...
live. Glitches.
You know what? And now all the cuts I was trying to make, now, you know what? Oh, of course, now it's like, okay, like the XSplit would be working. It starts making all the cuts.